When we talk about Cinderella, it's impossible not to think of the 1950 classic that enchanted generations with its simplicity and magic. It's the story of a kind young woman, mistreated by her stepmother and stepsisters, whose life changes forever when a fairy godmother shows up and gives her the chance to attend the royal ball. With her glass slipper, she wins the heart of the prince, and together they live the iconic happily ever after. That closed and complete ending gave us the impression that the story had reached its conclusion. After facing so many hardships, Cinderella finally finds her place in the world. The film is the perfect embodiment of a fairy tale. No continuation needed. But, as we all know, Disney didn't stop there. Decades later, Cinderella's story was expanded with sequels that brought new adventures and lots of questions. Following the success of the 1950 classic, Disney revisited Cinderella's world in 2002 with Cinderella 2 Dreams Come True. Unlike the original, this film doesn't follow a single central plot. Instead, it presents a collection of short stories that take place after Cinderella's happily ever after. The narrative revolves around Cinderella's mouse friends, who are writing a book about her new life in the palace. And surprisingly, we get an unexpected focus: Anastasia, one of Cinderella's stepsisters, who develops a redemption arc. Throughout the movie, we see Anastasia fall in love with a humble baker, going against her family's expectations. This storyline does something interesting. It transforms Anastasia from a villain into a character who, just like Cinderella, is searching for love and acceptance. However, this light and episodic plot also raises an intriguing question. Are these stories truly part of the official timeline, or are they simply tales made up by the mice, a sort of fable within the fairy tale? In 2007, Disney released another sequel, Cinderella Thurtro, A Twist in Time, which completely changed the direction of the story with a bold concept: time travel. This time, Anastasia, manipulated by the wicked stepmother, steals the fairy godmother's wand and alters the events of the first film. As a result, Cinderella never tries on the glass slipper, and Anastasia ends up engaged to the prince. The film explores the consequences of this timeline shift and takes Anastasia on a journey of regret and redemption. Over time, she realizes that this stolen life isn't what she truly wants. In the end, she sacrifices her chance at royalty to restore the timeline, turning down the prince and understanding that true love can't be forced. However, things get confusing in the final credits, when Anastasia is shown reuniting with the baker from Cinderella 2, hinting that her destiny with him still comes to pass. This raises a big question. If the events of Cinderella 3 happen before her romance with the baker in Cinderella 2, how do we make sense of that timeline? The contradictions start to pile up, leaving fans puzzled about how these two stories actually connect. One of the most widely accepted fan theories to explain the discrepancies between Cinderella 2 and Cinderella 3 is that the stories told in the second film might simply be fictional. As we know, Cinderella 2 is structured around a book the mice are writing about Cinderella's new adventures in the palace. Many believe these stories aren't actually real within the franchise's universe, but rather fantasies or idealized tales created by the little mice. In this interpretation, Anastasia's romance with the baker would just be an invention by the mice, a kind of fable that reflects Anastasia's hidden desires, or perhaps a way to humanize her character within the narrative. That would explain why the baker is never mentioned in Cinderella 3. He simply never existed in the official timeline. The stories told in Cinderella 2 would then be separate from the established chronology of the first and third films. This theory allows Cinderella 3 to work as a direct sequel to the original film without needing to reconcile the plotlines of Cinderella 2. In a way, this approach preserves the integrity of the main narrative, keeping the focus on the time travel adventure of Cinderella 3 without creating internal conflicts. Another interesting theory that attempts to resolve the contradiction between the films proposes that, although Anastasia meets and falls in love with the baker in Cinderella 2, she is tragically pulled back into her mother's manipulative cycle in Cinderella 3. The wicked stepmother, known for her controlling nature, could have reignited Anastasia's desire for wealth and status, causing her to question her relationship with the baker and pursue the prince instead. This theory suggests that while Anastasia had started down a path of redemption, she remains vulnerable to her mother's toxic influence. So, in Cinderella 3, she temporarily strays from her path, driven by ambition. But over the course of the film, she begins to realize that power and social standing don't bring true happiness. Anastasia's internal struggle between wanting a simpler life and craving social prestige is ultimately resolved at the end of Cinderella 3, when she helps Cinderella restore the timeline and rejects life with the prince. In the end, when she reunites with the baker, Anastasia seems to have learned that true love matters more than status. Completing her arc of growth and redemption, this interpretation portrays her as a more complex and multi-dimensional character, constantly torn between her aspirations and her longing for genuine love and acceptance. With the concept of time travel introduced in Cinderella 3, an even bolder and more modern theory suggests that changing the past created a multiverse. According to this theory, Anastasia's alteration of past events caused a split in the timeline, resulting in two separate realities. In this multiverse view, Cinderella 2 and Cinderella 3 represent two different timelines, one in which Anastasia meets the baker and follows a redemptive path, and another in which, influenced by her mother, she tries to win over the prince. The multiverse theory explains why the events of the two films feel so disconnected. In the Cinderella 2 timeline, her romance with the baker unfolds without interference, while in Cinderella 3, due to temporal changes, Anastasia takes a different path, one that ultimately leads her to reassess her choices. This idea of parallel universes allows both films to coexist, each presenting an alternate version of Anastasia's future. Although Disney doesn't explicitly explore the multiverse concept, it has become increasingly popular in modern franchises, especially in superhero and science fiction stories. Applying this idea to the fairy tale world offers a creative solution to the lack of continuity between the Cinderella sequels, giving fans the freedom to imagine different outcomes for their favorite characters. Part of the confusion around the Cinderella sequels timeline can be explained by the context in which these films were produced. In the early 2000s, Disney adopted a strategy of releasing sequels to their classics directly to video instead of following the traditional theatrical release model. Cinderella 2 and Cinderella 3 are prime examples of this trend, both developed with smaller budgets and different creative teams than the original 1950 film. This commercial approach had a clear goal: to keep these characters in the public imagination and attract a new generation of fans, especially children. However, this strategy prioritized fast, accessible entertainment, often at the expense of continuity and narrative cohesion with the original films. The sequels frequently introduced new plots and characters without concern for maintaining a consistent connection to the original, resulting in the timeline inconsistencies we see between Cinderella 2 and Cinderella 3. Moreover, the focus on Anastasia reflects a growing trend at the time of humanizing former villains. By re-examining her character from a new perspective, the writers attempted to expand the Cinderella universe by offering a fresh take on the once villainous stepsister. However, this effort to create standalone stories in each sequel also contributed to the inconsistencies that make the saga's chronology confusing. In the end, Cinderella 2 and Cinderella 3 are products of a time when Disney was trying to adapt to a rapidly changing market. While these films have their own merits, the lack of cohesive continuity reflects the way they were produced. They became unique pieces within Disney's legacy, expanding Cinderella's story, though not always in ways that align with the original classic. The Cinderella sequels leave fans with many mysteries to unravel, especially regarding the timeline of events. The theories we've explored, from the fictional storybook to the multiverse, offer different ways to interpret these inconsistencies and reconnect the narratives. At their core, these theories enrich and deepen Cinderella's universe, allowing fans to discuss and imagine various possibilities for the characters. So, what do you think? Which of these theories makes the most sense to you? Or do you have your own idea for how the stories fit together? Drop your opinion in the comments and share your thoughts with other fans.